Hello, everybody. My name is Kayla Strong, and I work with the NLP Marin team. And I'm here today talking with Carl Buchheit, who is the founder of Transformational NLP and the co-founder of NLP Marin. Hi, Carl.
Hi, Kayla. Hi, Kayla. Nice to be back.
Yay, I'm so happy you're
Yay.
back. And we're talking to everyone today about the four brains, that we don't just have one brain, we have four different brains. And that's why it makes being human so complicated. And there's a lot going on inside there. So in Transformational NLP and at NLP Marin, we learn a lot about the four brains and how to work with them. And I wanted to ask you a few questions about why that's important.
Go. It's one of my favorite topics.
Yay. Okay, so we'll just start at the very beginning.
Okay.
What are the four brains?
Well, let's see. There is a reptile brain, which is way back in the bottom there. And then above that, there's something that kind of bridges over into a mammal brain. It's actually a formerly called a paleo-mammalian brain. It's the old mammal brain. And it's really friends with the reptile brain. And then up back here and a little bit here, there's sort of a primate brain. And then right here in front, that's why we have vertical foreheads, is to make we make room for this extra little bit of tissue that we have that the other high primates don't have, which are called prefrontals. And so each of these things has a different role. Each of these brains has a different role, but it's not as if they don't work together. I mean, the entire brain operates to deal with the entire world and universe and all of life, all the time. But each of those four functions has a inclination in its own direction, so to speak, what it values, what it's designed, what it's evolved to take care of and provide. And a little bit, there's an analogy that Mother Nature has built the human brain the way certain computer operating systems have been designed over the last 50 years. Is there's a layer here, and then we'll issue a new product with a new layer here and a new layer here, a new layer up here, but all that other stuff is underneath there, and it has to work, and the interface among all those various levels has to be. It takes a while to work that out, right? So as humans, we're just starting to get the hang of working with all of ourselves explicitly, like in the sense of, hi everyone, let's talk about four brains, in contrast to some thousands of years old, really beautiful approach to working with all four brains, but without being able to use that lingo. Yeah. So reptile brain it's got seniority. That's the first thing to kind of pay attention to. It has complete seniority. It's completely debugged. It takes care of foundational, basic physical survival, heartbeat, blood pressure, respiration, creature brain territory. Every once in a while, a client says to me, I want to get rid of my lizard brain. And I say, oh, we could probably do that with an ice cream scoop if we open up the back of your head. It causes immediate body death. But it's, so lizard brain is really, really, really important. Reptile brain, nicer word than lizard. Its job is to make sure we're still physically here. And above that, the paleo mammalian brain. Oh, and the reptile brain doesn't do emotion. Or if it does emotion sort of reptile style. Like it's really hard to notice as the reptile, like, are they pissed or are they okay? It's hard to tell. They might be charging at you, in which case they're being aggressive. But so there's not emotion there. We move up to the paleo mammalian brain and we start to have emotion. We start to have big, like kind of primary emotions that mediate fight and flight and that kind of stuff, or that light them up. I mean, reptiles can do fight and flight. But they kind of do it. It ain't personal, it's just business. And when we get the paleo mammalian brain going on, we start to have some attitude, just a lot of emotion, a lot of states, driver states, a little bit of attitude. We add in the primate cortex here, and all of a sudden there's an awareness of belonging within a system.
Mm.
And there are also, some very high social mammals that aren't primates, dogs and wolves and the cetaceans, the whales and the dolphins. They've got their own deal. But there's an awareness of belonging within the group and hierarchy within the group and all of that. And then there's the frontal, the humans have got bigger frontals going on. This is where we're going to emerge into the prefrontals, if I can just simplify this down, which is the location of what's described just about by everybody as the executive function. The aspect of us that says, hold on a minute, is that really a great idea? Or what about this? And when there's damage here, let me ask you, I'll start that sentence over. When there's damage back here, we can have impaired movement or impaired speech, or but we're still us.
Yeah.
When there's damage here, like around in this area, our I am changes, because our I am is a lot of function of this material here, which the folks who notice the energetic flows and patterns of these things notice that this is connected to the heart center, and also this is kind of doing out to the non-local, the non-physical parts of human experience. So there's an analogy I use about this. You walk into the coffee shop, you walk into whatever, you insert proper name here. I don't want to give an advertisement for a gigantic global chain. You walk in there and you see your sweetie sitting at one of those little tables with their previous sweetie. And all four of these things fire off simultaneously. So the reptile brain, it ain't personal, it's business. There's just a necessity to eliminate the rival. The paleo-mammalian brain has a lot of emotion about this. The primate brain is thinking about the consequences of letting the reptile brain do what it wants to do in terms of distressing the other customers and possibly getting involved with the local authorities. And this part connected to this is just wants to improve communication for everyone. Okay. And all four of these things fire off all at once. And there are certain people who grow up in situations, in environments where the big questions in life are kind of asked and answered, like back here. Who's safe? Who's allowed to be around here? What's acceptable? What's not? And when they grow up in that environment, they tend to have the answers coming but with an explanation that comes from here. So sometimes all this part of us can do is try to explain what this part of us is already up to.
So is the part up here is the part that's actually trying to like make sense? Is that a way to say that?
The sense is all over the place, but
okay.
this part, no one has ever been able to interview a human that was completely missing one of these parts. So it's really tough to say what it would be like to not have it. There's all kinds of research about what happens if there's organic damage or accident or something, but it takes all four. And since they can go in four different directions, it can be really confusing.
So it sounds like they can all four be having a little bit of a different conversation, but based on the same event.
Oh yeah. I mean, they're like there is an I am somewhere. There's like a central authority I am, and I am seeing my sweetie with their previous sweetie. Yeah. What that means, what that necessitates, what that makes possible, what that eliminates as possibility, that's all variable as can be. And the thing is that it works beautifully almost all the time. But there are some situations in which it is useful to be able to make some adjustments in the programming which is to say the patterning that generates our experience.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
the adjustments get made a little differently for each of them.
Okay, I'm gonna go to the next question. I'm having all these questions fire off, but I'm gonna stay on track. So I think you explained it a little bit, but I want to ask directly is, then why is having the four brains make it so hard for us to experience change or for us to change at all?
Because they can have well, different goals, so to speak.
Mm.
And not that we're different. The different is that's just straightforward, but the word goals is a little iffy there. They can have different goals. They can be patterned and evolved to value different kinds of outcomes. So one of the things that goes on with the creature brain part of us is it doesn't think, doesn't analyze, doesn't have a mind. It doesn't plan in time the way the human parts of us live in time. Like critter brain doesn't live in time. It kind of has, time, like it has critter time. It's time for a snack and time for a walk and,
Time to go to sleep.
time to go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a kitty, this happens a lot. And since its goal, since its highly valued outcome is survival, it values things that are guaranteed to be survivable. And this gets a little bit more subtle here. But the things that come with a guarantee of survivability are things that have been threatening or were threatening and that were survived. So the threatening experiences are not pleasant ones. They involve threat, they involve some kind of vulnerability or uncertainty, or maybe questions about our basic belonging. I'm talking now starter humans, otherwise known as little kids. So that creature brain picks up patterning to value situations that it's guaranteed to survive in. That sounds fine, except that it keeps introducing into the experience of the human these situations that are designed or that are guaranteed to be survivable. So this is part of what goes into our replicating the same stuff that we learn to adapt to in childhood. We keep replicating it at work, or we replicate it in personal relationship, which is very confusing. I thought I got away from that, but I've been in 5 relationships with 4.5 different versions of that very same thing. What are the chances of that? Why do I find these people so attractive? And part of the answer is because the critter looks at that person and they can tell right away, ooh, there's going to be just the wrong kind of right thing there, or the right kind of wrong thing, and I can survive that all day and night. And then the humans just go, oh, it's Heartbreak City. It's confusing. Being human is more complicated than it looks. That's just one example.
Yeah. So it's like this front part of the brain is the part that's like, this is confusing, while this part of the brain is like, yay, we're surviving.
Yeah, except it doesn't even have to talk, right?
Oh yeah, it's just
it's because it doesn't. If the creature brain had a voice and a question in this kind of direction, the question would be, are we dead yet? And as long as the answer is no, then it would say what it's doing is working brilliantly. So it's not solely the function that puts people who survive alcoholic upbringings into relationships with alcoholics, or people who grow up in households that are extremely full of like really deadly shame, like shame to death. There's a reason that phrase is in the language. They get out of that household and they end up repeating it in the context of relationship. And when they meet someone and create relationship with someone who doesn't have that shame choreography patterning, who's just a genuine sweetie, this is remarkable, it's wonderful, I'm evolving, I'm growing, this is fabulous. And then after a little while in the relationship, they wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning with the thought, I don't know, there's just something missing in this relationship. And so it's complicated.
Being human is complicated. So this is the last question is, with all of that and this working with the four brains in the classes at NLP Marin and working with Transformational NLP, what is it that we're doing and learning to start to work with these four brains? Maybe, or that might be too broad of a question.
I think I can.
Okay.
I can. The wonderful thing about NLP, whether it's conventional NLP, the NLP from the 1970s and 1980s, which is gorgeous stuff, and I mean, it's really beautiful stuff. It's really beautiful work. They called it neurolinguistic programming. They might have called it neurolinguistic learning, but they used the word programming. And that, as an aside, that caused all kinds of headaches because everyone who would see the word programming would think mind control. I don't want to get mind controlled. But the word programming is in there for a reason, because using the NLP toolbox, what we can do is we can make available in as conscious understanding, conscious information, the events that the whole brain is using to create the experience that we have as humans. So someone who is experiencing fear, the fear just seems to, let's say, arise from nowhere. Let's say it's one of those times of the so-called unmotivated fear. There's no such thing as unmotivated fear. It is always preceded by way out of consciousness, pictures and sounds, and sometimes smells and tastes, and that's rarely in the external environment. In other words, part of our brain is adapted to survive in the presence of threat, and what it has been known to do is generate images of things that are threatening. And then another part of the brain, so to speak, this is not anatomical, it's functional sort of. Another part of the brain goes, oh my God, there's a threat. And so it's like part of our system shows itself a threatening movie, and then lions and tigers and bears, oh my. Another part goes, oh my gosh, threat. Another part goes, holy moly, we got to, and this is pre-programmed, it's programmed, and it's adjustable. If we can get to the instruction set that is generating the experience, and that sounds awfully mechanical, that sounds awfully kind of inhuman, but it's not at all. Human experience is very squishy. It's always really human. We can make adjustments. So if your brain is showing you pictures from the past that are breaking your heart or causing fear in the present, just for example, we can notice that happening. We can find out what that is, what those images are, and we can replace them with images that are far more up to date, far more congruent, far more useful for the person in their present time. This is not accomplished by talking. This is accomplished by some talking, but some observation and attention to certain signals and cues, they're called, that tell someone who has the experience to observe how the other person's brain is doing what it's doing, not what it's doing, but how it's doing it. So when we can notice that, it's a little bit like having the backspace key on the word processor. If you got the wrong sentence, you can backspace it out and replace it. And if it's still not right, you can backspace it out and replace it. It's not that simple, but it's in that direction, which is very different than saying, tell me about your fear, right? Which can be a valid and useful question, but it's a different kind of inquiry.
Thank you. And this is my very last question is, so as we start to use that backspace key in a way and start to kind of change those pictures and start to update, what happens with the four brains, or specifically maybe the creature brain?
The creature brain doesn't have to go on alert or generate caution states. There's yellow alert and red alert. We all know that from our Star Trek training. It doesn't have to generate yellow alert or red alert if there's not a threat. So the way that's adjusted is just noticing what the programming is that's introducing the threat. Either imagined threat in the future, but mostly it's previously experienced threat from the past. So we're going along just fine. We're in the Wednesday morning meeting, let's say. We all love the Wednesday morning meeting, and we're going along just fine. And then all of a sudden there's a sound, there's something that happens in the room, someone makes a face, there's that certain tone of voice, and our brain doesn't let us in on the deal. It just loads up the image of an angry authority of some kind, or, I don't want to get too specific. It loads that up so that it can keep us safe then, because that creature brain is working right now. So what happens is we start looking at the world through the eyes of like a profoundly scared 6-year-old. And we begin to have some of the felt and experience of that profoundly threatened 6-year-old. And that kind of complicates our style in the meeting, And then the people who are only age regressed back to being 8, they're totally in charge of the meeting because the 6-year-olds are too scared. That's just the brain doing its job, detecting a threat. Let's load up the patterning that let us survive when we were that age. There's no thinking about it. It's just automatic programming. That's the point of programming, is it's supposed to work automatically, and it does. I'm describing something kind of narrow and specific, but we can go in and revise that so the person can be in the Wednesday meeting and have the experience they want to have.
Yeah.
Right? Now, that doesn't make the person who annoys them at the meeting less annoying necessarily, but it makes the whole thing like far more pleasant. The question that gets us started with change work is, what would you like to experience? What have you got going on now that you don't want, that's super automatic, and oh my gosh, no matter what you do, it's really hard to get a different experience to arrive and then to stick, to stay with us. So we find out what the person has that they don't want, and then we find out what they would like instead. And then it sounds mechanical, and my gosh, it's not. We revise the programming so it produces what the person would like. Our systems are gorgeously designed to do this. We don't have an auto updater in certain regards. You have to hit install sometimes.
Yeah, so if we haven't hit install since we were 6.
About that, and our brain is detecting this threat. Oh, this is the threat of 6, and then let's be 6, and I think I'm making it more complicated than it needs to be for our conversation. It's just very cool to be able to learn to do that, and it's super learnable.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Carl. I'm excited we got to talk about the 4 brains, and we look forward to seeing everybody around.
Okay, yeah, just bring all your brains, that's all.
Don't leave any brains at home.
No, don't leave home without it, as they used to say.
Thank you.